Hi, I'm Anthony from Sydney Backyard Veggies. I'm going to be doing a garden tour today. Today's the 21st of June. So I'm just going to walk you through my winter garden and show you where my veggies are at. So I'm just over at my main veggie bed. This is my west facing bed. Just for context, it's probably 10 meters wide by about 10 meters long, so close to 100 square meters of growing space here. And this is where the majority of my veggies get grown. So the beds are separated into three sections. I've got the front section here at the front, and then I've got the back part of the bed is actually split into two sections, split in half by the mango tree and the avocado tree over there in the corner. So I'm just going to go through now and just walk you through what I'm growing at the moment. So over at the main bed, at the front section, I've got my sugar snap peas. These are now been in the ground for 8 weeks. These were planted out as seedlings. They're just starting to flower and they're about 1.4 meters high at the moment. I'm going to continue to put additional strings up the trellis system, which is got over there, but essentially they're going to be taller than the system, so I'm going to have to look at another alternate to be able to support them a bit better. They're just starting to flower, so we're looking at a crop from these in about 6 weeks time again, so just before spring, which is great. They're doing quite well. I have been putting a little bit of extra support in front of the plants just to hold them back against the trellis system because they tend to want to lean towards the sun. In front of them I've got my cauliflowers. This is my third planting, and these cauliflowers were planted, again they were planted in early May, and they're doing all quite well. These ones had the pak choys that I'd shown in previous videos that I had interplanted between them. Those have been harvested, and now these have been healed, had their second round of fertilizer added to them, and again doing quite well. Keeping the sprays up, making sure I keep treating them with white oil so that aphids and cabbage moth larvae don't go through and devastate the plants. But they're looking quite good there. Here I have this is my fourth round of broccoli, and as you can see there's about 30 plants in this section. 4 rows of 6 or 4 rows of 7, and they're all just starting to produce heads. These are about a week away from being harvested, and the plan is once I go through and harvest these in about a 2-week period, they'll all be harvested. I'll have another round of brassicas going in this spot, so I've got a few seedlings that I'm just starting off now, and they'll be used to be planted out here. This is my second planting of sugar snap peas. These were quite struggling seedlings when I planted them out, but they're looking pretty good. They've really bounced back, so it's always worth giving even struggling seedlings a chance to grow. They've got heaps of flowers on them, and I'm gonna have to start picking some of the crop at the moment. There's a few peas in there that are ready to go. And then here, this is in a previous video I showed my planting out of this bed. This is at the back I've got curly kale interplanted with pak choy, and then I've got the onion, spring onion at the front. These pak choys will be ready to harvest next week. The curly kale it's not as growing as fast as I'd like. I think it does need its first round of fertilizer, and I'll get that on this weekend. But I'm hoping that by the time I clear out the pak choy, they'll be ready to power through once I give them that application of fertilizer. This is my third round of broccoli. I am harvesting this at the moment, so over the last few days I've been harvesting the heads, and they're actually quite nice sized heads. This is a shady part of my garden in winter, so I have been struggling with the shade from the lemon tree and the compost pile, but I still get a crop out of them, and they're looking quite good. So once this bed is cleared, again I will be planting another round of brassicas in this spot. Over at the back part of the main patch, I've got here my Brussels sprouts. Now these are planted in February, so they do take a long time, but I'm happy to say I've got 5 plants here, and I'm happy to say, if I bring you in closer, that I am starting to see a few of the buds come through, which is absolutely great. I'm expecting a harvest in a month's time, but at this stage, just keeping them watered, keeping them fed, and they're looking quite good and healthy at the moment. Adjacent to these plants, I've got my cauliflowers. Now these is my second planting, and I've got 10 here. These again have been planted probably 2 months ago, and if I come across, I can happy to say that I do have a couple of heads showing up. And there you go, there's one there. This one will be ready to harvest this time next week. Yeah, they're looking quite good as well. I have seen a bit of insect pressure on them, as you can see there, but there's nothing that's really damaged the plants. They're weeks away from being harvested, so they're happy to share a bit with the insects. So coming back, this is the old cabbage patch. I have been harvesting this progressively over the last month. Still got a few heads left. I am going to go through and harvest the rest of them this weekend to clean the bed, because I do have a lot of seedlings I want to plant out. But yeah, these have been doing great. If you plant your cabbages early in autumn, they're happy to sit through the winter, just gaining size, and you can just harvest as you need. So that's what I've been doing at the moment. So I've always constantly got a bunch of seedlings growing, so I'm always trying to find new spots. I don't like having empty spots in my garden bed. So what I've done is I've gone and planted what I would argue is my last round of shelling peas. Just planted a row straight down the middle here. This is the Green Feast shelling pea. This is the shelling pea variety that I go with. And on to the right, I have planted my last round of Wombok. I am probably pushing the season with these plants. They tend to want to grow in autumn and then produce their heads in the middle of winter, in the cold of winter. These look like they'll be pushing into September, and I'm just anxious that they will bolt before I get a harvest, but we'll see how we go. And it's always a learning lesson when I come to gardening, so hopefully I prove myself wrong and I can grow it this late. And coming over, I've got my other Brussels sprouts patch, and again, these are looking great. There you go. They've got some really nice Brussels sprouts showing. These are in part shade, so they are doing a bit of a struggle compared to the other ones on the north facing side of my main bed. But I've got 11 here, and hopefully I'll get a crop in about a month's time. And then I've got I had a spot here. It's a very shady spot, but I had a few broccoli seedlings left over, so I planted them out in this spot. This is quite shaded by the trees adjacent, but I am getting a harvest from them. They should be ready soon. I'm not expecting the heads here to be big. It's just because they're in the shade. It's just not going to produce a huge head, but it's better than wasting this space and wasting the seedlings. So they've been planted out here. Just come to the back half of the main bed, and this was where the old eggplant patch was, and they got pulled out about 3 weeks ago. And what I've done is I've gone and planted that same day. I planted 3 rows of cauliflower, which was the first 3 rows from the right, and then towards the end there, I've got my last row of broccoli. What I've done is, and I might do this for the other 2 rows, I've gone and interplanted some radishes, French breakfast radishes. I don't like having. I like looking for opportunities to plant out crops, faster growing crops in between slower growing plants. So I'm hoping I get a crop of radishes from this patch. But with me, I tend to struggle with root veggies. I feel that I've got too much nitrogen in my soil, and it doesn't tend to produce any bulbs. These plants are ready for their first round of fertilizer, so I'll be doing that this weekend as well. So So coming across, this is my first planting of sugar snap peas. Now, these I've been harvesting for the last 4 weeks and they've been great. Just come across the front. Unfortunately, even though this stake is at 1.8 meters or 1.7 meters tall, the plants outgrew it and have been blown over, but that's fine. These are almost ready to go, almost finished to harvest, but I've still got a few harvests on them, as you can see there. And as you can see, I'm also struggling. I think I picked this up in the last video. Chocolate spot, as you can see, that's called chocolate spot. Starting to spread through the plants, and look, that's part of the natural attrition of these plants as they get towards their end of their life. The diseases come through. Coming across, this is my one box. This is my second planting. Again, like they are growing in part shade, so they're not going to be overly large, but they are starting to produce a head. I'm just trying to stay on top of the insects. I'll give them one pour application of fertilizer this weekend, and then that was it, and I'll just start harvesting as needed. But they're looking quite good considering it's been quite cold now in June, and yeah, it's just not as much sunlight as I'd like on them. Coming to the back behind the mango tree, just there, I've gone and planted my next round of broccoli. I've got 20 seedlings in this spot. These were planted a week ago and they've settled in. I do have what looks like a casualty over there which will need to be replaced, but these are planted 40 centimeters apart in rows, 40 centimeters apart. Look, I try to find spots to plant out all my seedlings, and this is a decent spot. Look, it will get more sun as the days get longer, so they should do quite well here. I've got my lemongrass here in the corner, which I leave from year to year, and I harvest it once a year and freeze a lot of the lemongrass shoots. And this is a round of peas. I just had extra seedlings, so I've gone and planted them underneath the avocado tree. And if they produce, then great. Those were just leftover seedlings that I just wanted to make some space for. While I'm over here, I just want to give you an update on my avocado tree. I'm happy to say that the avocado tree is just starting to bud, and it's just about to start flowering. As you can see, we'll just bring this down. These are all my avocado flowers, and they look like it's going to be another big year for flowers. Last year, it was full of flowers, and I was unlucky enough to get a really big rain in September, which knocked off all the flowers. So I'm hoping this year, if the weather holds up, that we should be able to get a crop. We're really looking forward to getting some fresh avocados from the garden. So here I am now over at my north-facing side of my garden. I've got a number of garden beds down this row, good for growing winter greens in the cooler months. Over at my north-facing beds, I've got my cos lettuce here at the front. These were planted, in March, I believe. And yeah, I'm just starting to harvest them now. They got some nice heads. I might have to give them a bit of a water today, but I've backed off completely off all the fertilizer. They don't need any more fertilizer at the moment, but I need to move through them because, as you can see, they're just starting to bolt. See, that one's just bolted, but I don't like them when they start bolting. So these will be harvested over the next 2 weeks. Once they start bolting, they tend to get a bit bitter. So I want to get on top of those. I've gone and interplanted in between. On the left, I've got my silver beet. I've had a poor year for silver beets this year. That's just not having any luck with them. They've still got the disease that I showed in the last video coming through, mostly on the older leaves, but there's not much vigor in the plants. Even though I've tried a few different things, tried to put additional fertilizer, just seem to be struggling, but I'm getting a bit of a harvest from them. It just hasn't been a year for silver beet. But what I've done is I've gone and interplanted, and you can see in here I had some leftover kohlrabi seedlings, which I've interplanted between the lettuces and the silver beet, and they were planted about 2 weeks ago, and I believe in about 6 weeks time I'll be ready to harvest these. This is one of my star performers, my rocket patch. Again, I harvest this fortnightly and it's doing great. This will be harvested next week. It's got a few leaves in there now, which I probably could harvest, but just wanted to bring everyone's attention. I'm starting to see white blister come through the plants. Now it's not overly There's not huge amounts of it at the moment, but as the weather warms up, the white blister will come through, and then it's about time to give up on the patch. This is my second round of kohlrabi. This was planted in space of the first kohlrabi planting. I harvested that last month, and as you can see, it's just starting to bulb up at the bottom there. So I just keep the water on them, give them another bit more fertilizer, and that'll be great. Coming over to my English spinach. I try to grow this every year, and I really struggle. I just can't seem to grow English spinach. I am getting a harvest of them, and I am keeping the water up to them, and I just struggle. So if anyone's got any ideas in the comments, please let me know. I just can't. One thing I can't grow is English spinach. I really struggle to grow those big luscious leaves, but I'll keep trying at it. Then finally, over at the last of my beds, I planted out my last planting of cabbage. This is the green coronet. This is the same as the one I'm harvesting at the moment. They're looking okay. Unfortunately, I had a bit of a chicken escape, or chicken pens just over there, and they literally came over here and just decimated my plants. Look, the plants will bounce back, but as long as the growing tip's still there. But yeah, it set them back about a week, so I'll just have to be a bit patient with them while they recover from the chicken attack. On my south facing bed, I've been quite slack. I've done very little planting here, but I do have my first round of green feast peas that I planted out. And these, I've got a video of these when I planted them out in, I think, about March. Look, these are almost at the end. They're full of mildew and mites, so they're ready to go. They've got a few pieces of fruit left, which I will harvest, but these will be done in about 2 weeks' time. I had interplanted at the time some wombox, and yeah, note to self: don't interplant wombox in between two high growing rows of peas. They just don't get enough sun. They'll produce, but they're just not going to get enough sun. Not going to do a great crop. I am planning on cleaning out this spot and planting out some broad beans in this area, but I'm still a bit far off on that. But I will eventually do that. Coming towards the end of the south facing row, I've taken up a really big push in making my own compost on site. So I've been collecting horse manure and chicken manure from my pens, and I've been composting a lot, especially coming towards spring. I need to have a lot of soil, so I've got a lot of manure that I've been using on my patch at the moment. So a lot of this stuff is composted, ready to go, and as I'm planting out new patches, I am putting out more horse manure and chicken manure. It's a mix of both before I plant out my seedlings. So it's actually added a lot of organic matter to the soil. And finally, just happy to see that my lemon tree, I'm in full harvest of lemons at the moment, is doing great. I've harvested my first round. I've added my amendments and like fertilizers to the tree. I added that about a month ago. I've got a video of that you can go back to and have a look at. But yeah, I'm continuing to harvest, and I'm expecting to see the first buds for next year's crop showing up on the tree soon, this month I'm hoping. So as we move into late winter, I'm planning on still planting out a lot more of my brassicas. I've moved on from planting any more cabbage, any more cauliflower or Brussels sprouts, but I will still keep planting more broccoli, and I tend to plant broccoli all the way up to mid-September, when my last crop will go out. But what I'll be starting to look at over the next month is start thinking about how I'm going to plant out my spring veggies. So starting in mid-July, I will start raising my first seedlings of capsicums and chilies. I'll be looking at planting more jalapenos this year and more bell style capsicums. They take a while to germinate, so I like to start them in early to mid-July. I will also be looking at buying my tomato seeds. I will start raising them at the late part of July for plant out in my veggie patch in mid to late August. I'll be also looking at eggplants. I'll be looking at my beans, bush beans. I'll be starting them in about late July, also to plant out by late August. But besides that, I'll be trying to make a lot more compost this month in participation of the spring season. I will try to plant a few more leafy greens, the pak choys, more coriander, more lettuce if I can, but I will try to move away from the heading varieties of lettuce. I'll try to plant loose leaf lettuce varieties. You know, growing in winter is a bit of a slower time in my garden. You know, the soil has cooled a lot, so the plants do tend to take a lot longer to grow. But on the flip side, there's a lot less pest pressure at this time, and you tend to get a lot less disease going through your plants. So yeah, you win some, you lose some this month in the garden. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the days getting longer, having more opportunities to work in my veggie patch, and hopefully start seeing faster growth in the garden. That's got my little cat just came through to say hello. Okay, thank you everyone, and I'll hopefully see you at the next garden update.